Hey, we're back with Dolan's Dugout. We're in the dugout with your host, Steve Dolan. I'm Ramon Scott. Steve, great to see you again. We've wrapped up the high school football season, and it didn't go quite the way we wanted to, but I still think it was a great season. We're going to wrap up those couple of games, maybe even get into a little baseball talk. They call it the winter meetings, but the weather's been so good out here, you'd think that they would just make it called the meetings. And we'll talk some baseball in just a moment with Padres television statistician Steve Dolan. But right now it's high school football statistician Steve Dolan. Steve, the CIF state championship bowl game semifinal, the Helix Highlanders, went up against Sierra Canyon in a great game, but Helix had the trouble stopping Sierra Canyon in that big game. Tell us your observations, tell us about the game, and we're going to wrap up the football season here tonight.
Well, of course, the thing about Sierra Canyon, Ramon, that a lot of people probably know the name LeBron James. Of course, that's where his son goes. So that's the type of athlete you're going to get there. And I thought for Helix, Helix was representative in that game, definitely. But before that, of course, to win the open division, to beat Carlsbad here in front of over 8,000 people at Southwestern College, Ramon, I thought that was impressive. It was really an interesting game. I mean, I told a buddy of mine before the game, I said the under-over for this game would probably be about 48, and it was 49. Helix won 28-21, but who was to know that it would be 0-0 at halftime? And then second play or so of the second half, Carlsbad, their wide receiver, they hadn't got the ball to Cole Wright all night because Keontae Scott had done such a great job on him. They got him out away from everybody, and he took a little flare pass and went 80 yards with it. Carlsbad's up 7-0. Helix comes back and drives 80 yards. Christian Washington scores a touchdown. Okay, we're 7-7. Helix scores 28 points, but was it their offense? No, it was their defense. 2 straight drives. Keontae Scott, who was, of course, on 97.3 The Fan, the Padres station, I was doing statistics for them that night. He was our Holiday Bowl player of the game because he did such a great job on Cole Wright. But a big thing, too, game 7-7, and Keontae intercepts the ball, takes it back 30 yards. All of a sudden, it's 14-7 to Helix. Carlsbad gets the ball back. John Carroll takes it back 38 yards, another pick six. Helix is up 21-7. The Highlanders win 28-21. And as you know, Ramon, that's 3 championships in 6 years for Helix. That's 10 CIF titles in football for Helix. So when Oceanside sits there, and I know Oceanside won Division I, El Camino won Division II, and called themselves Title Town. La Mesa's got its own title team, and that's Helix. 10 CIF championships. Congratulations to the Highlands. Of course, like I said, it didn't end the way they wanted it to in the state playoffs, but I think for anybody from here, once you get past CIF, everything's gravy.
Hey, I'd like to see Oceanside continue this upward climb. Wouldn't it be neat to see Helix and Oceanside meet again in a football playoff game with big implications, kind of like the old days?
Oh, yeah, and I think I would pick Helix. Why? Because, remember, Oceanside started at CIF run as a number 9 seed by beating Steel Canyon, but they had to go overtime to do it, and then Oceanside ran the table. Actually, we have the CIF poll that you and I vote in with the San Diego Union Tribune. I actually had Steel Canyon. They ended on number 9, but I voted them number 6. I just thought, as well as they played Oceanside, they were basically toe-to-toe with Oceanside, and of course Helix beat Steel Canyon. I understand when you get into comparative scores, it's not always apples to apples, so to speak, but I certainly think if Helix and Oceanside played, that Helix would beat Oceanside. I thought another team, though, how about El Camino? To me, they're the new Steel Canyon. Remember a couple of years ago, Steel Canyon is a number 7 seed, goes all the way, wins a state championship. Now in Division II, El Camino as a number 7 seed, 1 win away from a state championship. And Rowan, if I could, with 97.3, The Fan, our first playoff game was Valley Center at El Camino, and it was kind of like a toss-up. But I remember talking to El Camino's athletic director before the game, and he told me, he says, yeah, it would be great to win Division II. That's our goal. And they did as a number 7 seed. But he said, what we really want is to get back in Division I because, again, a team like El Camino should be in Division I, and I think they'll be back there soon. Again, they ran the table. 2 Oceanside teams win county championships, but again, our own Helix, 3 in 6 years, 10 overall. Can't beat that.
I'm sure the legacy ratings will work out for El Camino, and they'll probably end up there. I think that would be awesome. As far as Oceanside's concerned, I agree with you, Steve. And in fact, I don't think it's any surprise. I think Oceanside made the improvements throughout the year. Yes, they were not as rated highly before the year, but credit to them, credit for the development of Tua and their rise to that point. And by the end of the year, they certainly were playing as well as any team in the county, and I think it was fitting that their final rating was representative of how they played, talking about the final media poll and how high Oceanside was respected by the 31 voters.
Yeah, which is ironic because Oceanside, theoretically, the top 4 teams are in the open division, which they were, with Helix and Carlsbad. Then, of course, you have the Saints and Cathedral, the 2 Catholic schools. But Oceanside, think of this, they enter the playoffs as the number 9 seed in Division I. So, in essence, they enter the playoffs as the number 13 team in the county. They run the table, 3 road games, a championship game. They'll go from number 13 to number 3. That's not bad.
Now, Steve, I know you wanted to rehash a little bit that's open division final game, and I just want to tell you I channeled my inner Bill Dickens, and you know how good of a friend he was to us, but didn't know if you noticed this, but the quote-unquote fearless forecaster, which, maybe should have been retired, but I just feel so passionate about my relationship with Bill that that's something that I've wanted to continue. And somehow, some way, Steve, the fearless forecaster in that open division final predicted 28-21. So hats off to you, Bill, for giving me that information.
Oh my goodness, that's just amazing. I mean, that's amazing that you picked the score on that. It's just too bad. I know it's high school football, but too bad you couldn't have been in Vegas and got a fortune on that. You could have retired. But it's funny when you say that. God bless Bill Dickens. Bill was your boss. He was my boss. And as you know, Ramon, I spoke a little bit at his memorial service. One thing I said about Bill, and I'll say it again, is that if they ever were to have a high school sports writers Hall of Fame, to me, Bill Dickens would be the first one that he should be in that. And I'm not just talking about locally. I'm talking about nationally. Bill was great. And he was a fearless forecaster. Keep it up. But just remember one thing about Bill, because Greg Durant, who's down in South Bay, he and I have known each other for years. He's known as a stat man down there. Greg shows up at everything. But we always joke, every week Bill would pick a game 28-27. So remember, just keep that in mind. Every year, 28-27, somebody, the close game.
Yeah, you would actually, you do it every single week. And I don't know if anybody really ever realized that. Every single week, one game would have 28-27. That was incredible that he would do that. And I got away from that, but it was a great memory to remember that. Now, Steve, got a hitch up, though, certainly on the state playoff game. Do you think that it was just, hey, you know what? That's Southern Section football. Sometimes our teams are up against it. We've had some great performances, some great runs of late. Our county teams, not just the run that Helix had in their championship and other teams, Steel Canyon's run, but was this just running up against, like you said, the athletes of kind of like a Bronny James of football, if you will, and that's what we ran into because Helix couldn't stop them on that night. Now, granted, one thing that I did say was that Helix wouldn't necessarily miss El Elyon Noah. Of course, you're going to miss him, but Christian Washington did a tremendous job. But where they would miss El Elyon Noah was on the defensive side of the football.
That's a good point. I mean, because Sierra Canyon, scored 38 points. I mean, you just didn't do that against Helix this year. I mean, Helix had a great defense to go with that great offense. Hey, one thing I wanted to say, you mentioned Elyon Noah and then Christian Washington taking over. Ramon, what it reminded me of, years ago, if you remember, the Denver Broncos every year would have a 1,000-yard rusher, and every year he had a different name. So what does that tell you about Helix, that Christian Washington came in and did what Elyon Noah was doing? Great offensive line.
Great no doubt about it. And just give a little bit of a teaser, Steve, debuting the All East County team here in a couple of days. I know all the other polls are out. I'm kind of tied up in basketball and everything, but just want to give a shout out to El Elyon Noah. He will be the EastCountySports.com Player of the Year. Jaheim Allen Pompey of Mount Miguel, the record-breaking senior. He will be the Offensive Player of the Year for the East County team, All East County team, and John Carroll will be the Defensive Player of the Year for the All East County team. Robbie Owens, Coach of the Year. I've got Chance Johnson, Return Man of the Year, and Grossmont's Axel Gonzalez as the Kicker of the Year, and have those teams hopefully ready by the weekend. If we just slow down a little bit and stop playing all these basketball games, maybe I could finish putting the finishing touches on those All East County teams.
I can't argue with you. Let me say something about Elian Noah. At midseason, before he got hurt, and even right after he got hurt, I was in on a discussion with some of the guys who picked the All-CIF team. And at that point, they were even debating, even if Elian Noah does not come back, do we still make him the County Player of the Year? Because he was just spectacular. I mean, I'll tell you what, though. I mean, Elian, great player. I'll tell you what, though, a player I saw in the Division I final, Tyler Buckner from Bishops. I'm sorry, make that Division II against El Camino. Oh, my goodness. I mean, he had 5 touchdowns in the first half by himself. I mean, he's a quarterback. Anytime he got out of containment, they weren't going to catch him. And 5 touchdowns in the first half. Overall, he accounted for 8 touchdowns. What the 5 TDs reminded me of, back in the mid to late 70s, Lincoln had a guy score 5 touchdowns in the CIF championship. Guy named Marcus Allen. I remember he went to USC, played for the Oakland Raiders, Kansas City Chiefs, etc. Great NFL player. I mean, I was just really, really impressed by Tyler Buckner. And as you know, he's going to Notre Dame. He does have 1 more year at Bishops, but there is a rumor that he will graduate in 3 years, go back to Notre Dame, and either play next year or maybe redshirt, because I believe he's going to have some sort of knee surgery after the season. But my goodness, he was impressive. But again, if Elian Noah had stayed all year, there was no doubt that everybody I knew that's on the All-CIF panel was going to vote him Player of the Year, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I think that was the decision that we made, was just that, you never want to make it a career body of work, but certainly if he would have been able to continue on with the season, we would have seen that same thing. And you mentioned Christian Washington, and I wrote about it in the preview of the state championship game. If you created one super back between the two, I mean, they would have incredible numbers, so hats off to that Helix offensive line. Disappointed, Steve, in what happened against Sierra Canyon. Maybe I didn't give you an ample opportunity to comment on that, and I asked you if you thought it was just that southern section power that got to Helix in that one, and not having Noah on defense. Helix couldn't stop him, Steve.
Exactly, and that just goes back to the athleticism. I mean, some of those schools in the southern section, and like I said before, LeBron James, his son could go anywhere, and that's where he went. So that tells you, again, what kind of athletes they're getting there. I mean, I remember last year covered the Cathedral Catholic game against Narbonne, a team which was ineligible this year and next year. Cathedral Catholic beat them, but they had like Rashad Penny's brother on that team, and that team had some athletes too. They didn't have the depth, but I'm just amazed at some of those kids that come from that southern section.
And Steve, I thought it was really, I don't know how to characterize it. It was kind of cute. El Elyon went on local television to announce his decision to go to Utah State. And I just thought it was neat. Congratulations to El Elyon for his commitment. I think he's going to do great in Logan. And they asked him, Paul Rudy asked him, he said, they said, are you going to be, is it going to be a Noah tackling Noah, another Noah? He goes, well, it could be, but I think it's going to be a Noah juking another Noah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, State's got a good program, too. I mean, their quarterback, Jordan Love, is so good that after his junior season, this season, he's going to the NFL next year. But they got Gary Anderson back there coaching now. He was there a while back, and then how good was he? He went from there to Wisconsin. But then after 2 years, he went back to Oregon State. He just wasn't a Wisconsin guy, but he was part of that legacy they've had there for the last 10 years or so of having winning records, having an excellent team. So I think Elian Noah really picked a good place to go, because Utah State in the Mountain West, they're right up there with the Boise States and, may I say, the San Diego States, although it's harder at Utah State because you're on the same side of the bracket with Boise State And teams like that, Wyoming's come up and all. And in San Diego State, on our side of the bracket, heck, Hawaii went 5-3 and won our side of the bracket. So he maybe didn't pick the right side of the bracket to go to in the Mountain West, but he certainly picked the right type of school to go to, because Utah State, I think, especially with Gary Anderson back there, they're going to be good for a while. And Eli and Noah is going to be a big part of that, too.
Steve, just this week, Christian High, former Christian High standout Jesse Matthews was awarded a scholarship for his great work that he did at San Diego State this year. And it just goes to show you and give everyone a hope and a chance. Jesse Matthews, the walk-on really at San Diego State, was the MVP of the scout team and earned his way all the way up into a scholarship. And he ended up having, for a team that, frankly wasn't that successful passing the football, Jesse Matthews had an incredible season at wide receiver. We also should note, although he will not be starting in the bowl game, a great performance that this steady performance. For us, it was great. It was a great performance to see Carson Baker leading the Aztecs to that victory. Actually, kind of a monumental victory for Baker, because you don't see someone step in like that and get their first victory. I don't know if you can quote the stat on that. I wish I was ready for this, but go ahead. I'll let you think about it a little bit.
He was, I'm just going off the top of my head, I think it's about 19 of 24 for somewhere 170, 180 yards.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, it's good for a first start, and against BYU, which for those of us who go way back know what a great rival that is. And certainly Carson will be in the mix next year at quarterback, although it's going to be a battle. There's going to be 4 or 5 guys in that battle, but I think at least he's got a leg up, because the starter, Ryan Agnew, is a senior. Let me go back, if I could, with Jesse Matthews, though, from Christian High getting a scholarship there. Very emotional time. Players were around him, though. But you know what, Ramon? That says something about the Christian High program, because he's not the first Christian High player who walked on at San Diego State and got a scholarship. A few years ago, we all remember the great punter from Christian, who also, when he's a Christian, played both ways, Joel Alisi. Same thing happened with Joel, is that he was given a scholarship. So it says something about these guys that come from Christian as walk-ons. They have the work ethic. They earn scholarships. And think of what that means to his family, too. All of a sudden, instead of having to pay for everything, everything's paid for. Your tuition, your books, everything. But did he earn it? Absolutely. He started, I believe, going back to spring practice, he was the number 8 receiver on the depth chart. And by the end of the year, he's starting. By early in the year, he's starting. So that says a lot about Jesse, his work ethic. And again, as I say, I think it goes back to Christian High School, the way they teach him there.
Yeah, and a lot of based on his athleticism, they said that he has an incredible leaping ability, and he showed that. He knows how to go up and high point the ball. And I remember Alisi. In fact, I played slow pitch softball with his brother, so I was following him real closely back at that time, especially talking with his brother each week about some of the games and everything like that. So, Steve. Big news. I'm going to keep talking about San Diego State while we're on it, because we got you here. The $15 million donation, just terrific. And then it looks like, more money is going to follow. This is exciting for the project in Mission Valley. Yeah,
I mean, if I'm the Aztecs, I hope that stadium's ready by 2022. I wouldn't bet a dime on it either way, but they're on their way. We'll see what happens there. I mean, it would be a great recruiting tool. And if I could, speaking of San Diego State, how about the basketball team being 10-0? I was actually working the game Sunday for Fox Sports San Diego, sat right next. My seat was literally right next to the San Jose State coach. I'll give him credit. I mean, during the timeouts, he was very positive. Even when they got down, he kept saying stuff like, we're good enough. And they were. But San Diego State on the last play, down 1, they got the ball to Malachi Flynn, who was 2 for 12 in the game. Then all of a sudden he hits a 3 with under a second to go to win the game. But Ramon, think about that shot, though, that Malachi Flynn makes. He makes it. The Aztecs are in the top 25, which they are. He misses it. They lose by 1 to San Jose State. They go from top 25 to all of a sudden they'd be 9-1, as opposed to a team that's assured right now they would be assured of getting the NCAA tournament. They list, as you know, on Selection Sunday, good wins, bad losses. That would be beyond a bad loss. That would be a horrible loss. As a matter of fact, I read today, had the Aztecs lost, they would have been the first team ever that started as a 30-point favorite to lose a game. So again, one shot makes the difference between top 25 and maybe down the road missing the NCAA tournament. What a shot by Malachi Flynn.
Yeah, you know what, Steve? It would have surpassed, because just you're talking about all these teams falling, and I will give you the philosophy behind this and what's happening here with a lot of these top teams falling. But that loss, being a 30-point favorite, that would have surpassed Duke's loss just a couple of weeks ago in that incredible game to Stephen F. Austin. I actually wrote a column about that game for Gaming Today, and think about that kid who made that basket and what a moment it was for him. But all the things that came about after that because of his family and the things that they had gone through in the Bahamas with the tragedy with the hurricane and everything that they were able to raise money just because of them making that basket. Him making that basket kind of brought awareness to the plight of that country just because of that basketball game. So that was incredible.
Yeah, it's funny because Stephen F. Austin was like a 24-point underdog. But difference is Stephen F. Austin was like rated in the 180s out of 350 some teams, and San Jose was like in the 330s. That's why they were a bigger underdog. But it's amazing, like you said, it brought attention to the Bahamas. It brought attention, I believe his dad's a pastor. It brought attention to his church, what they had lost.
Yeah.
It's just incredible nowadays, Ramon, as you know, with social media and all, how, again, one shot does that for Stephen F. Austin and for a player there, brings attention to the Bahamas. And like I say, with San Diego State, one shot's the difference between being in the top 25 and maybe being on the outside looking in on NCAA tournament Sunday.
Yeah, and of course I want to, great excitement. Everybody's excited on Twitter. I was excited. We were all excited when that shot went down. And we can certainly say and draw back a little bit and say, well, look, San Jose State, we barely beat these guys. But all these other teams are getting knocked off. I mean, they're not finding the wherewithal to get those clutch victories like that. Everybody's having a flat spot. And what I equate this to, Steve, is especially when you see those top teams, they're talking about it right now, especially now that 4 teams who have been number 1 have fallen this year. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the best players aren't sticking around anymore and they're going off and doing better things. So those teams, especially those blue bloods, they're all going to be good in the end. But when you're a new team kind of meshing everything together, there's still a lot of kinks to be worked out. So that's why teams like Duke, Louisville, whoever they are, they might be subjected to those early season defeats because they might be getting blue chippers, but they're still going to mesh all those parts together. And a lot of times you're facing teams that don't have kids that are leaving, that are senior heavy because they're not NBA players and they're sticking around for their whole time and they've played years together and have that cohesive unit. And quite frankly, it's kind of bringing a lot of excitement to basketball this year, I think. Not saying that there'll be upsets in the NCAA tournament that deep, but for now, it's kind of bringing some excitement to everything. And who knows what will happen. Maybe we'll get some of those teams like the Butlers of the world back in the finals again.
Yeah, and Ramon, totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, I like senior teams because of those guys that stayed in college for all 4 or 5 years. I worked at San Diego State for over 16 years. I got to be honest with you, having worked at a university, I don't like this freshman coming in for 1 year and going to the NBA. I think they should just establish their own league where they go right after high school or go straight to the NBA. It's not fair that they're taking up spots of other students or other, players who'd be there for 4 years just to come for 1 year. I mean, I'm sure that Jay Billis's of the world would disagree with me, and they've got their point. But my point is, really, I mean, going to college for 1 year, I mean, why go? Why go? If you're just going there for 1 year to play basketball and get to the NBA, that's not what the college experience should be about, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you see some players now, and this is just one example, but LaMelo Ball, for example, taking his act overseas as a professional. You can criticize that, but hey, you're getting paid, and there's great experience. And you look at some of the things he's done there, and now all of a sudden he's ready to come back, get ready for the NBA, and probably will be a little bit more seasoned than if he was staying here. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, that's why I say I'd just rather, if they want to go pro right out of high school, whether it's here, there, or wherever, I'm all for that. But as far as the one and done college basketball, again, to me, if you've worked at a university, you've worked on the other side of campus, the academic side, it just doesn't go over real well. I mean, I would rather these guys just go straight to the pros wherever it might be.
Well, that leads me into one other thing. I'll just make a note of this. I don't think you have to respond or we'll have a response to it, but I just want to note something I saw today. Speaking of kids that left early, how about our own Jalen Hands from Foothills Christian High? Steve, today in his G League game, the NBA minor league, or maybe that's where the kids should be going directly to if they're not going to go. I think Jalen made the right call. He didn't make the Nets, but he got signed his G League team, the G League representative of the Nets. That's what they do. And you know what he did today? 28 points in his G League game today, and I believe 6 boards and 5 assists. So he might be ready to get that call very, very soon with a decent Brooklyn team.
Good point, too, because like you say, you get the call very, very soon. But if he was still playing college basketball, taking up the spot of somebody who's going to be there 4 or 5 years, he can't get the call soon. He'd be at UCLA all year. So, as I said, I like the road he's going, and one day he will be playing in the NBA, of course.
And I don't know, Steve, you want to talk any more about preps? I kind of wanted to hit you up on some of the winter meeting stuff. We're both wearing our Padres stuff. We're wearing blue. Are we?
Yeah.
Let's start there, Steve. Let's start there. You're all about the brown, right?
I'll wait for the brown giveaways next year, I guess. That's it's funny. I got to tell you a real quick story. Guy named Dennis Cushman, who's a marketing genius, hired me at San Diego State, worked there as a VP, worked for the San Diego County Water Authority. Like he told me years and years and years ago, I never forgot. He said, "Why do teams change jerseys? It's not just about changing jerseys. More so, it's about the money because now everybody's going to go out and buy all their new brown. Just like when teams do that, whatever the case might be, when you change your jersey, what do people do? They go out and buy it, and it's a marketing strategy." But although in this case, the brown, I think it was obviously something you had to do, bring back the brown, because, again, we're wearing blue now. But, this, if it was a little shade different of blue, it could be Dodger blue, Brewer blue, Kansas City Royal blue, etc. blue, Brown.
Yeah, and I never minded the switch blue, and people might not remember, or maybe they've read the story. It was really an influence that when Steve Garvey first came into town, he kind of was critical of the team colors, and that kind of set things in motion back then. Even though it took a long time to get to that point, it was him kind of calling out the team colors a little bit. He said, we look like overdressed tacos.
Yeah, I remember that.
And eventually, I think the Padres can be unique in one way, and it's too late now. We're going to the brown. Maybe they will wear. I've seen they do. They're kind of bringing the camouflage back a little bit as well. But you know what? The Padres could have been unique in the fact that, they could have been a team that were many different colors, and I wouldn't have minded it. I liked the way we wore blue sometimes, camouflage on Fridays, brown on some days, mix and match. I don't mean like a crazy Pittsburgh Pirates mix and match, a blue top and a brown pants or something like that. I think our uniforms have always been pretty nice. My favorite, if you remember, Steve, I'd have to date it back to about 1973. I'd kind of call it maybe like the Randy Jones uniform. It was the script Padres that was kind of handwritten across the shirt. It was a white or maybe off-white jersey with brown letters and gold trim. And I thought that was the most beautiful. It was the all-brown hat with the gold interlocking SD. It was probably my all-time favorite jersey that the team had.
Yeah, it's funny because my concern has always been, the jerseys are fine, whatever, but my concern is, who's wearing those jerseys, and that's something that it's turning around for 2020. I'm just concerned how this is all going to work out. I'm looking at my sheet here now, the trade so far. Of course, you started getting Trent Grisham and Zach Davies from Milwaukee for the pitcher Eric Lauer, Luis Arias, who's going to play shortstop. Interesting, because I think Davies right now probably fit in as a number 3 starter, maybe behind Garrett Richards and Chris Paddock. And then after him, you got Dinelson Lamet, and then your 5 would be either Joey Lucchesi or Cal Quantrill. The rotation's okay. I think it's interesting, though, because people expected maybe the Padres to go out for Noah Syndergaard. That's not going to happen. Zach Wheeler signed with Philadelphia. I thought it was interesting, though, yesterday that A.J. Preller, the general manager, said that they're taking Michelle Baez and Adrian Morahan and telling them both to get ready to become starters. So what's interesting about that trade getting Zach Davies is that I think Zach Davies may be the best starter again on the market because, again, it looks like they want their young guys to do that. And you've already got Mackenzie Gore and Luis Patino who will be up within the next year or two. And then, of course, your next trade, Austin Allen to Oakland, he was your 3rd string catcher, didn't matter. Jurickson Profar, interesting case because 6, 7 years ago, he was rated the #1 prospect in baseball, but just hasn't panned out. I was kind of sad the other day to read that he's had the yips thrown from second base because that was an issue with Steve Stacks, Chuck Knobloch, etc. So concerned there. They've even talked about getting Whit Merrifield from Kansas City. Those talks have kind of fizzled. Maybe they'll rehab. Maybe they'll come back. I mean, I think that would be great getting him. I thought, the trade, the most recent trade, getting Tommy Pham, from Tampa Bay, you had to give up Hunter Renfroe. You had to give him up in that trade. And I thought that, I liked Renfroe, believe it or not. He hit a lot of home runs. He's your best defensive outfielder. But Tommy Pham gets on base. I'll tell you what, Ramon, one thing that drove me nuts going to every Padre home game last year is how every game strikeout, at least 10 strikeouts a game. And I mean, you'd have games where you'd have Will Myers in the lineup followed by Austin Hedges, and that right there, that was 5 strikeouts. And that's why right now they're trying like heck to get rid of both of them. I think they'll be able to move Austin Hedges, Will Myers with $20 million a year over the next 3 years, unless the Padres plan on playing well over half of that. It's going to be hard to move him. I know they tried to move Kansas City in a Merrifield trade, but again, Kansas City ain't taking on that salary. They're not about that.
Steve, it's funny because after the media reports that came out after maybe Preller couldn't work a deal yesterday, and he came out in the media later that night or early today and said, we'll just don't expect anything. We're kind of putting the brakes on that. Well, it looks like things have changed in the last 8 to 10 hours. I mean, the tweets that you're seeing, it looks like it's a home game for Preller here in San Diego, and he's not going down without a fight. He wants to make some kind of move. I don't think it'll be whatever it is. I trust the guy. Look, this is a big sticking point for a lot of fans. What he's done. I'm right here. I'm on YouTube with you. You're in the booth with these guys. I am pro Preller. I believe in him. I believe it goes back to his relationship with Welke and a true baseball mind and what they must have talked about. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall in some of their conversations. It looks like, his influence, Welke's influence, has made such an impact on Preller. And I just know that seeing these tweets over the last few hours, it looks like he's ready to fire away and get something done before the winter meetings end.
And there's one name I'm going to throw out there that's just now coming out. As you know, if the season were to start tomorrow, most likely Tommy Pham's in left field, Trent Grisham, or if Will Myers is here, in right field. Center field, question mark, Sterling Marte, Pittsburgh Pirates. He's available. Pirates want to dump him. I believe he has a $12 million salary next year, which in baseball terms ain't bad for a good center fielder. So I think that's going to be the next hot topic is Sterling Marte going to come to San Diego? Because, again, they needed to redo that outfield, and they've pretty much redone 2/3 of it. But right now there's a big question mark up the middle. I mean, you're supposed to be strong up the middle. It was funny last year, you'd have Hedges catching, Urias at second, Margot in center. It was all right, but, you could really improve up the middle from that. I mean, not so much defensively with Hedges, but, a guy can't bat 179 every year and be your catcher. So, again, look for Marte talks to heat up. And Whit Merrifield, that would be great because Merrifield will be your second baseman. He can also play the outfield. So if you needed a backup in the outfield, that'd be him. I would love to see them get Whit Merrifield, although I don't think it's going to happen. I would love to see it happen.
Steve, you talked about money, and I just couldn't help but I want to talk money with you for just a moment. Hey, for about 24 hours, Steven Strasburg, West Hills High graduate. He was the highest paid pitcher in Major League history, $245 million contract. Of course, there was some talk of him maybe coming back to San Diego. I'm not sure there was really any validity to that. But congratulations to Steven Strasburg, the West Hills High grad. We know Garrett Cole got the big payday and well-deserved considering, what great athletes make nowadays. But Steven Strasburg, Steve, the most valuable player of the World Series, and just a great honor to get that acknowledgement of being such a high-paid player. We can sit here and talk about guys getting paid, how much athletes are getting paid. It is a true accomplishment to be offered such a terrific contract.
West Hills Wolfpack, oh my goodness. You think of Steven Strasburg when he was there, 12, 13 years ago. I mean, you see him at West Hills, you had no idea how good he was going to be because in high school he was good, but he got great at San Diego State and then carried it on from there. But it's interesting, Ramon, because I always had the feeling he was going to go back to Washington. But what's interesting, he had 4 years for $100 million on his contract. He opted out of that. And you're thinking, we'll see. And then all of a sudden, he gets 3 more years, $145 million more. What's interesting about Steven Strasburg, though, is I think he's still going to be great for a while. By the 7th year, not so much. It's funny because guys like Steven Strasburg are getting paid not so much just for what they're going to do, but for what they have done. I mean, you take Zach Wheeler going to the Philadelphia Phillies. He's getting paid 5 years, $118 million for what he's going to do. Strasburg and Garrett Cole, too, I mean, for what he's going to do, but also for what he has done. Because, again, I'll tell you what, I would never sign a pitcher for 9 years. I mean, as much as I love Steven Strasburg and as much as I think Garrett Cole's a great pitcher, Strasburg in his 7th year of his contract, his final year, Cole in his 9th year in his final year, you're going to see Albert Pujols at the end of his career redone, I think.
Yeah, I think the thing with Cole, a 6-year deal would have been more reasonable and try to structure it. But a lot of times, we're not capologists here or however anything works. You got to balance things sometimes. I understand that. But just congratulations to Strasburg, $245 million. Already had a great contract before, as you mentioned. That was definitely noteworthy out of all the guys that have come out of East County, all the great athletes, even the ones that don't play team sports. You talk about guys who have made a lot of money from here, like, Jimmy Johnson or Reggie Bush and things like that. And Stephen right up there with all those guys.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I mean, because when Steven Strasburg was in high school, he wasn't what Reggie Bush was at Helix, I'd say, like you mentioned. But little did you know then that Steven Strasburg would become as great as athlete as there have ever been in East County for what he's done. I mean, like you say, not a World Series MVP, first pitcher ever to go 5-0 in the postseason. I mean, he wasn't just good, he was great in the postseason. Again, he probably earned himself an extra $50 to $100 million just by what he did in October.
And give a little bit of credit to not only Strasburg for kind of managing along with the Nationals, but, you look back in the first couple of years of his career with the injuries that he had and the controversy, if you will, about shutting a guy down. I think it all paid off in the end for the Nationals.
Absolutely agree. But what's funny, Ramon, I was right with everybody in 2012 saying, what are you doing by shutting him down? But 7 years later, showed how smart the Nationals were and how dumb the rest of us were.
Yeah, no doubt. So, anything else you see out of the meeting, Steve? Have you talked to anyone? I know there are guys down there, but I just expect the Padres to try to get something done, like you mentioned. I just found it funny that Preller said they were going to shut it down, and I think it was just a smokescreen.
Ramon, I'm actually going to give two things about the meetings, not necessarily, but two things that have really stood out to me at the meetings. Number one, the Yankees, by signing Garrett Cole, and they said they'd go to whatever they had to do, and they did it. They become the evil empire again. Number two, it's great that all this is happening now because, as you know, the last 2 years, nothing happened until February. I mean, Manny Machado didn't sign until February 19th, Bryce Harper February 28th, and now all these guys are signing 2 weeks before Christmas. What these winter meetings have done for baseball is put high interest back in baseball because these last 2 years when nobody signed until February, it just took away a lot of marketing, a lot of everything. Think about it last year. If Machado had signed on December 19th instead of February 19th, how many more tickets would the Padres have sold? Oh my gosh, he signed before Christmas. I've got somebody in the family who loves the Padres. What am I getting for Christmas? Oh, Manny Machado's there. But, when he signs February 19th, it creates a buzz. But you could have 2 months more of buzz if he had signed before Christmas like these guys are doing now. So, again, my point being that it's really bringing the interest back to baseball. I think that's one thing that baseball has really suffered from the last couple of years. Guys not signing until February or whatever. Dallas Keuchel and Craig Kimbrell going halfway into last season. Guys are signing now. It's putting the interest back on baseball. It's making it much higher than it's been the last 2 years. Great PR.
Is it a position of strength for Major League Baseball? Are they dealing because of the health of the game? One thing Major League Baseball has done that the other sports have kind of not been able to do is keep up with the new the new media, how they distribute the games, distributing them, on the internet, on the phones, and things like that. We try to use metrics and measurements with ratings sometimes, but baseball is getting money from everywhere right now. And is that kind of what we're seeing?
Oh yeah, I think they really need to bring the interest back. Because Ramon, as you know, survey done a year or two ago, the average baseball fan then was a 56-year-old male. So baseball is trying to go younger. They have to go younger, because that's your demographic. That's who you want to reach out to. That's who you want to start to have coming to your games. And again, by getting names out there like Garrett Cole, Steven Strasburg, Anthony Rendon, who will sign any day now with somebody. You need to get those names out there, because what's made basketball so great, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, all that, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry. I mean, all these names, basketball has the names, and you need to get these names out there, and they'll get these names out there now. I mean, when's the last time you had interest in December in all these big names in baseball? I think it's just a perfect thing that's happening, getting these people signed right now, because again, there's interest in baseball. And I'm sure in New York, a lot of season tickets going to be sold because of Garrett Cole. Washington, and well, they already won the World Series, but I'm sure signing Strasburg is going to help them get a bump. And again, it's just good that baseball is doing it now, because baseball really needed a shot in the arm, and baseball's giving itself a shot in the arm right now.
Okay, well, I promised you an under half-hour show, but I'm just finding it so fascinating. I just got 2 more things for you.
Sure.
The controversy with the Houston Astros. Steve, what are we going to see there? Because fortunately, it's not been swept under the rug, but this has been an undercovered story, really. I mean, yes, it's been talked about, maybe more so with some of the hardcore media, baseball media, but fans in general, maybe because the season's over now and, we're past it. It's a huge story, actually. And Manfred today said that this is the largest investigation that Major League Baseball has ever had. Over 60 people being interviewed, maybe, what did they say, 500 artifacts of information. What do you make of this, and what will be the penalties?
Yeah, it wasn't like 76,000 emails, too, they're going through. And
is that what it was? That's okay.
Yeah, and it's funny when you bring that up, when we were just talking about, Strasburg and Cole signing and Rendon pretty soon. Nobody's happier about that than the Houston Astros, because if nothing was happening at the winter meetings, what would be the number one story? It would be the Houston Astros cheating on the sign stealing. What I think is going to happen, I think a couple things. I think Houston's going to get a big fine, but more than that, take draft picks away from them. Because, Ramon, I remember years ago, I heard Rodney Harrison, the former San Diego Charger, New England Patriot, won Super Bowls there. Something Harrison said as an athlete, he says, don't fine athletes, or in this case, don't fine organizations money, because they've got the money to cover it. Where it hurts in football is suspending a guy, or here taking draft picks away, because again, money is not the issue here. They've got the money to cover whatever fine they're going to pay. Take draft picks away from them. Hurt them that way. That's how you got to hurt them. And I think that's going to happen. I think the Astros are going to lose draft picks. I mean, they're certainly not going to take away their 2017 World Series title over the Dodgers. But again, you got to take players away from them, draft picks, and some heads are going to roll too, because whoever was behind this. And what's going to be interesting too is that 2 of the guys on the bench. Then one as a bench coach was Alex Cora, who manages the Red Sox, and then of course Carlos Beltran, the Mets' new manager, was a player there then. So their involvement in this, so it's going to extend beyond the Astros. I don't know what they'll do to those 2 guys. I don't know if they'll do anything. But with Houston, you got to hit them where it hurts, and that's not the pocketbook. That's in players and player development, and in people heads rolling because of what happened.
Yeah, I just wonder how they could think that they could get away with something. Yeah, maybe every team's doing it, but no other thing is nothing else has come forward. You'd think that if this was going to happen, that the shoe would drop, and we'd hear about from other teams or whatever, and guys maybe played in multiple organizations, like, oh, well, we did this at that place and whatnot, but that hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's funny. They've gone from being those nice, cute little Houston Astros who won the World Series 2 years ago and almost won it this year to the second most evil empire right behind the Yankees. It's really, I mean, they become a hated team, I believe.
Yeah. I think that'll grow that reputation. Like I said, I don't know if you went to a casual baseball fan on the street, I don't want to say, everybody, but, they might not know. they might not know that this is even a factor, that this has even happened, because I just think that only people who are really, really, maybe our audience may know this, and of course a lot of people do know it, but I think as the season approaches, it'll get talked about more. But I don't think it's still, at this point, still that big of a story like it should be. So.
Oh, I think its legs are going to grow. And again, once the winter meetings are over and once, the big players are signed, that's why I say the Astros are lucky that there were big signings this week to keep them out of the limelight. But again, this story needs to grow. And I think it's going to grow because I think once you get past Christmas into January and all that, and before spring training starts, what's going to be the hot topic? I think it is going to be the Astros, and, deservedly so. I mean, this bit about, trash cans banging the dugout and all. I mean, stealing signs has always been a part of baseball. I mean, but not technology-wise. I remember, heck, when I played in high school at El Capitan, our first base coach, Danny Sheets, Danny was very smart. We used to have a thing. He would look into the catcher, and if he said nothing to you, it meant fastball. But if he said Dolan, your last name, it meant curve. But I remember one time, though, he didn't say anything, which meant fastball. The guy threw me a changeup. I was like, because we didn't have any sign for a changeup. But that's okay. That's been part of baseball forever. But the technology they use, the cameras, that's cheating. That's Bill Belichick.
In fact, I think that if anything, if they wanted to actually implement some technology, and I'm a guy who's kind of for the electronic strike zone type of thing, but you know what? I don't think I would be objected to having communication devices between catcher and pitcher to allow them the secrecy that they might need. The way technology works nowadays, you could have something where catcher's pushing a few buttons on his shin guard, and the pitcher receiving the information with just a little strip of on his glove indicating 1, 2, 3, or 4 or something like that. That's something I would actually be in favor of to protect that integrity. Because, look, here's one more thing. Steve, 45 minutes. What have you done to me here? One more thing that's going to tie into these rule changes, okay? They talked about it today with some of the things that could be occurring. Steve, do you really think that they could bring in a pitcher and make him face 3 batters? I'm totally against that. You have a beautiful game that involves strategy, and you're going to take that right out of the game with this.
Well, it's funny, Ramon, because, of course, they announced last year they're going to be doing that this year. The person that's really going to get hurt by that is the left-handed relief specialist who came in to get 1 out. I mean, it's going to be different because technically, let's say you have 3 straight left-handers in the lineup coming up, and you bring in that lefty reliever that should have faced those 3 guys. They can now bring up a pinch hitter for all 3 of those guys, and, you'd have to pitch to the first guy, but you can't do a darn thing about it, the second or third guy. I mean, I think it's a bad rule, but on the other hand, another thing that I didn't like is and I'm glad they're not doing this year, is the expanded rosters. Because I remember I did a game last September where I can't remember the team exactly where the Padres were playing, 6 pitchers to 7 batters. And that got ridiculous because, again, you had too many guys in the bullpen. That's going to be alleviated this year when you have 28-man rosters in September. And, of course, the rosters are going up to 26 men during the season. But, again, that part I didn't like either. I know how you can prevent that, but this is going a little bit overboard too much the other way now, where you have to face 3 guys. I think back the years when the Giants were in the World Series and you had your Javier Lopez's and guys like that who'd come in and get the 1 lefty out, and they would get him out. Then you'd get him out of the game. Now you can't do that. That's going to be interesting.
No more Jesse Orozco coming in to face the 1 guy.
Yeah, I mean, he pitched in the right era because, again, the Jesse Orozcos and the Javier Lopez's wouldn't want to be pitching now because it's not designed for the left-handed specialist.
And, of course, this year, I believe it'll be this season where the 40-man – I like this one, that the 40-man rosters will be no longer when we reach the September call-ups. I think that starts in this upcoming season where they're going to – I think it goes up to 28, and I think they'll move some guys back and forth. So that'll be interesting as well. And then one other thing that did come out of the meetings a little bit – you talk about these games, though, Steve, and how long they're taking and why we have so many pitching changes was – because of the offense. I mean, come on, man. I want 4-3 games. Those are exciting. We don't need these games. And what they said was a design. They talked about how the balls were being made, and now they've backtracked it all and said, oh, you know what? We didn't have the seams high enough, so the pitchers weren't able to do more things with the ball because the seams were flatter.
Yeah, nice excuse. What do you hear nowadays? Launch angles. Why are guys like Austin Hedges batting 179? Launch angle. That's all they're thinking about is trying to hit home runs. That's why I like the Padres getting a guy like Tommy Pham. And if you have Pham and Tatis at the top of your order, you actually have two guys who can single, steal second, get to third, however, score on a fly ball to second base like Tatis does. I mean, I like that's baseball, not this. Everybody's trying to hit a home run. I mean, it was funny with the Padres last year, Ramon. It used to be every time they get to 10 strikeouts, we kind of, note it on the air or whatever. And actually, the real story wasn't when they struck out 10 times. The real story was when they had a game when they didn't strike out 10 times. That was just pathetic. I mean, the strikeout, that needs to stop.
I wonder what the you might know, but I'm not putting you on the spot on it, but I'm wondering what the record was when we were able to keep the strikeouts under double digits, what our win-loss record was, and the games that we went over 10 strikeouts.
Not sure, but again, I just think, I mean, that could be looked up, but I'm sure there was a whole lot.
It sure correlates for sure.
Sure, it was a whole lot better when they didn't strike out 10 times a game.
Well, long gone are the days where we liked, back in the 80s where you'd have a Vince Coleman. I mean, where's the stolen base? Where is the stolen base anymore? You don't even have it. There isn't a guy in baseball who can get on, and that is the whole focus of the entire stadium on that one man getting ready to run. Is there anybody in the game that has that effect on a game anymore? I don't think so.
It's funny because like Tommy Pham, he stole 25 bases, I believe, last year. Was like one of the top 5.
That's elite nowadays, right?
Yeah, because the Padres are talking now about how, they'll give us stolen bases. And back in the day, 25 stolen bases, you'd say, come on. Back in the day, Tommy Pham should be stealing 85, 90 bases like Vince Coleman did, like Maury Wills did back in the day with the Dodgers, But the stolen base, it's funny how small ball, the stolen base, the bunt, the sacrifice fly, all that stuff is taken on by the wayside. I don't get it.
And it doesn't make any sense because all the organizations are preaching analytics, which that would really more or less kind of work its way into that type of baseball, small ball, if you will. So I guess I'm one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
Yeah, I'm not as much of an analytics guy. I still remember Dick Williams when he was managing the Padres back in the early 80s. Dick was a great manager. I remember even when they first came out with stuff on computers, one time we asked Dick about computers, and usually he said, I'm not using it. We said, why not? He says, because it doesn't tell you when a guy's going to do, and I can't say what he said, but his point being, a computer can't predict what somebody's going to do. Gut reaction. I mean, that's why I liked, Bruce Bochy when he was managing, because Bochy was probably one of the last gut reaction guys left. I mean, Bruce may or may not ever get back in the game, but certainly I don't see a guy like Bruce Bochy ever going for analytics. I mean, I don't know. I'm just one of those that, I think you can overanalyze stuff too. That's what concerns me.
I'll let you go on this note. I don't know if you saw this today, but Bruce Bochy is back in baseball, Steve. I don't know if you caught this one. Bruce is going to be coaching the French national team.
Yeah, it's funny that I heard that he's going to manage that. But as far as managing the major leagues, I don't know that he ever wants to do that again, but it's kind of interesting he's doing that. I mean, he's doing that. Mike Piazza has the Italian team. I'm already looking forward to the World Baseball Classic in 2021. I loved it. I did the games here in San Diego in 2017. I was really blessed to work a whole week with Paul Severino, who's the Miami Marlins announcer now, who's been with the MLB Network. And you remember the great Jim Cott, the pitcher, worked a week with them. And it was just an experience of a lifetime getting to work with guys like that, even though it's spring training time and all. Love the World Baseball Classic. And then when you see guys like Bochy, like Piazza, they're going to hopefully be involved in it. It's like, right on.
I got to let you go, Steve. I can keep you forever. One more thing, please, sir. Jace Tingler, what's your immediate feel for him and what he's done? I heard him all day. I heard him on several shows today. I loved everything I heard. I trust Preller in this. There's obviously a connection between the Padres and the Rangers organization because dating back to, like I said, with Preller and with Welke and those guys. What's your feel on Tingler?
Hard to say. Obviously we don't know that much about him. I know he's a very smart baseball man, very good baseball man. I guess my only thing for Jace Tingler is he's been an American League guy, and once you get to the National League, you start getting into double switches and all that type of stuff. And, in the sixth inning, do I bat the pitcher when I'm down 1-0? We got 2 on, 2 out. You don't have those things in the American League, so it's going to be an adjustment. But I hate to be cliché, but it's basically a wait-and-see thing with him. Preller likes him, and Preller's basically, A.J. Preller's put not only his reputation, but his job on the line, because if this doesn't work, he won't be working with the Padres much longer.
No, but you know what? If it didn't work, if I was around for this long and I've got it to this point, which is a great point, let's face it, it's worked so far. We haven't won what we want to win. Maybe even this season was a disappointment, but this is the year. And you know what? We might even actually be a year ahead of schedule, considering what we were talking about just 2+ years ago. So let's let this settle in, but it's going to be big. And obviously it's tough because going to have to go up against Big Blue next year. The Giants not too worried about their situation. They've got to work with a new manager and everything. Arizona certainly concerned there that they might have something left. But I'll let you go on that, man. I love you. Thank you so much, Steve. We could talk again. We save it for later, but we're going to be bombarding people with more videos because I think we get a lot out of this.
Well, Ramon, thanks so much for having me. Look forward to it, and want to wish everybody out there have a great week and have a good night.
Thanks a lot, Steve. This has been Dolan's Dugout. For Steve Dolan, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.